Did you know that the word forgiveness appears 117 times in the Bible? Specifically, it occurs 48 times in the Old Testament and 69 times in the New Testament, according to a Google search. The word forgive in all its variations, forgiven, forgiveth, forgiving, appears over 120 times. So, something tells me it's important. Yet, we don't talk about that F word very much. In Matthew 6, verses 14 through 15, it says, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you." But then there's a but. And it's a big old but. It says, "But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive you your sins." All right, got it. The message is clear. It's time to forgive. But here's that but again. Who? Who do we need to forgive? Is it ourselves? Is it our parents? Is it our coaches? What's the right answer here? I'm here today to tell you what I did. And if either of the stories I'm getting ready to share resonates with you, then I can tell you that it's time to consider the path to forgiveness, especially if you were violated in some way or abused. And look, I was one of those. And yes, I did forgive her. That story in a moment. First up, who thinks that this message is for them before I even start? And you don't need to raise your hand. You can just answer that in your own mind. To me, that's the power of God. 0 mistakes. You're right where you're supposed to be, so settle in. Here's some truths about the F word, forgiveness. Forgiveness is an area where people frequently struggle. Everyone has been wronged at some point or has wronged somebody else. Holding on to grievances can work in the background. It creates stress and rob us of the resources we need to be happy and productive. And truth number 4 about the word forgiveness, a lot of us don't realize that forgiveness is a process. It's not a single event. Here comes that first story. Back in 2007, I was a nationally syndicated radio personality all over America through this really cool project that installed radios in thousands of buses across America. It was a brilliant idea for so many reasons, but there were some child advocates out there who hated this project with a passion. Because look, our radio show exposed their kids to ads on the way to school. No different than any other radio station, but here's the thing that was unique about us. Bus Radio, is what it was called, was really careful not to air crappy ads. We didn't talk about sodas or snacks. It was mostly like these government ads for anti-bullying campaigns and how to be a better person and a lot of that stuff. But like I said, there was one group of people that really had it in for them, for us, specifically me. And this guy started to become really vicious in 2007. In 2007, he was posting daily across the internet about what a horrible person I was. He would take excerpts from my other radio show, which, by the way, was geared towards kids between 16 and 24, and he would say that that's the kind of content that I was exposing to people on the buses, which couldn't have been further from the truth. Bus radio was squeaky clean. But what you need to know is that when you're doing a night show on the radio and your audience is predominantly 18 to 24, the things you need to talk about to that audience to connect with them are very different than the things you would say to an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or to a 14-year-old. And nobody understood that more than me. I was so careful not to come even close to towing the line on bus radio. But this advocacy group just had it in for me. And they started to say some really horrible things about me. They started to attack my character as a person, attack my character as a father, attack my character as a husband, attack my character as a human being. And I put up with it for a really long time. I did that thing that everybody advises you to do in the radio and television and entertainment business, which is just tune out the noise. But eventually the noise got pretty loud. And eventually I got to a point where I started to become pretty irritated with this advocacy group because they got to a point where they were just lying. Now they were just putting out stuff that wasn't true. And I started to talk to the crew at Bus Radio about lawyering up and going after these groups and forcing them to stop the discussion. I was advised that that probably wouldn't end successfully. And so I decided to take a different route. And here's where the F word comes in. I decided that the best thing that I could possibly do was to reach out to the leader of this advocacy group and ask them for a meeting. In my heart, I knew that if they just met me, if they met Matthew, the dad, they would see that there wasn't an ill bone in my body. There wasn't any part of me who wanted to ruin children's lives. As a matter of fact, I only wanted to lift kids up in the morning. After a few weeks of some back and forth with the fella who was running their advocacy group, I got a phone call. This guy called me up and he said, I have an idea. How about I buy a couple of tickets to the Brewers game, because I was living in Milwaukee at the time, and I'll come up from Atlanta, and we'll meet at this baseball game and we can just talk. Now, my wife thought I was absolutely insane for going to meet this guy. As a matter of fact, pretty much everybody in my world thought I was insane for going to meet this guy, but I knew in my heart that that was the right thing to do. And so one night, in I think September of 2007, I show up to Brewers Park or whatever it's called, where the Milwaukee Brewers play baseball. And I meet this guy in the upper deck in our seats. I walk up to him, I shake his hand. We start talking to each other. I very candidly just answer his questions as best as I can, right? Without breaking or breaching any contract, situation that I had on my end. And after about 4.5, almost 5 innings, he looks at me and he says, I tell you what, I really appreciate your time. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to take down every single thing I have ever written about you. To which I replied, thank you. And if you ever need anything from me in the future, I'm right here. The next day I woke up. And sure enough, this guy had taken down every single thing he had ever written about me. Luke 6:37, it says, judge not and you will not be judged. Condemn not and you will not be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. Like I said, he took down every single thing off the internet. And 2 months later, Bus Radio went bankrupt. So I guess we both won. Here's some other truths about the F word. Forgiveness does not mean that you condone or you forget the wrongdoing. It doesn't even require reconciliation with the person who wronged you. Here's another truth. The person you might need to forgive is yourself. And lastly, let me say this because it's critically important that you hear me. Do not entertain thoughts of revenge. Thoughts of revenge can occupy your mind. They can actually create more stress, and they can lead to irritability, depression, and according to my friend Dr. Dave, a psychiatrist of almost 30 years, on top of that, if you follow through with your thoughts, there's a really good chance that it'll escalate the conflict or cause you to feel a sense of guilt or regret for your actions. I work as a trusted voice inside the Durango Detention Center here in Phoenix. It's a juvenile facility, and man, have I heard some stories. You should hear some of the reasons these kids are in jail. But the most common story that I hear, revenge. Somebody did something to them and now they got to do something back. And as my friend Cordero Holmes says, that's a game nobody wins. He's right. Douglas Horton says, while seeking revenge, dig 2 graves. One for yourself, ... Dr. Dave, in our series Revive and Thrive, puts it like this. He says, harboring grievances can lead to anger and resentment. And when they're allowed to simmer, the result is chronic stress and a negative effect on your cardiovascular and immune system. Anxiety and depression can also be a result of harboring those grievances. Ruminating about past offenses can become a distraction and cause people to be less focused and productive. It sounds like one of those pharmaceutical commercials, right? May cause anger and resentment, chronic stress, heart disease, and the ability to catch every virus out there. Doesn't that sound terrible? Who wants that? But here's some more truth. According to Dr. Robert Todd Hurst, the leading cardiologist, about 2,000 people die every single day from heart disease. 1 in 3 reports chronic stress every single year. So who's holding on to what? What are you holding on to, even a little bit? Forgiveness, by contrast, helps release these negative emotions, which promotes emotional healing and a sense of inner peace. It's a freeing process that ultimately leaves you feeling better, lighter, less weighed down. And though the path to get there can be difficult, come on. I wrote a short book a few years ago. It's terrible. Don't go looking for it. I'm not a writer, I'm a speaker. But the book is called How to Talk to People You Don't Like Talking to. And in it, I discussed that for most of us, it's beef with people that we have in our personal and professional lives that we're holding on to. Somebody who crossed us in some way. And for a lot of people, at least the folks that I interview on my podcast, it feels like most of the beef is with a family member. Mine certainly was. I grew up in Coon Rapids, Minnesota, the firstborn to Naomi and Dan. And growing up with a mom like mine was equal parts war and peace. As I tell everybody in my life, I love my mother so much. She tried so very hard with the limited tools that she had about what it meant to be a good parent. And yes, we had I love yous and hugs and support. But we also had screaming, anger, violence, abuse. And as I remind everybody, no one is in therapy because they got too many hugs. Most of my childhood, under the age of 10, was spent getting into trouble and receiving the most violent of abuse. And as a little kid, you don't really understand what that's doing to you. You just know that you don't want to be around your mom and dad. And after visiting with many psychologists over the years, I've come to learn that what that did for me was that it made love very confusing for me. Because the woman who told me she loved me the most was also the person who caused me the most pain. And then over time, I didn't want to be in my house. I remember being 12 years old and looking around my home going, what are we doing? Is this all there is? Is this what it's going to be like for the rest of my life? Well, I wish I could tell you that the next 10 years of my life with my mom got better, but they didn't. In fact, they got worse. We turned into 2 people who really just didn't have a connection. Which is hard, right? Because you want to love your mom. You want to see your mom's phone number show up on the cell phone and answer it. But I didn't. I sent her to voicemail more times than I could count because I just didn't want to hear her voice. A few years later, our father died violently of something called sudden cardiac death. Back to that cardiovascular disease that we were just talking about a few minutes ago. And it separated my family for a solid 20 years. Sure, we still got together. Sure, we still did things from time to time. Sure, we still visited with each other, but you could tell there was just this wall up. 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that relationship with my mom was taking an incredible toll on my health. That relationship was starting to impact me physically, not just emotionally and spiritually, but physically. And finally, on July 12th of 2021, I had what I call my day of reckoning. I had my third and final panic attack, and I went to the emergency room because I was pretty sure I was dying of the same thing my dad had died from. And the doctors came back in after running every test with me, and they said, and I quote, "There is nothing wrong with you physically." Thankfully, I was spiritually and emotionally aware enough to know that I needed to go to work on those demons from my past. I needed to find a path to forgiveness for my mom. Step one. 4 days later, I checked myself into a mental and spiritual retreat where I work with 12 angels, 12 unbelievable people who were instrumental in helping me change my life. And we spent a lot of time talking about my relationship with my mom and what a toll that was having on me. And Troy, my buddy, started to introduce this path to forgiveness. But it would require one very difficult conversation with my mom. After that retreat, I phoned her. And she answered, and she was well aware of what was going on, obviously. She said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Mom, I'm not good. We need to talk." I said, "This thing has had a hold on us for as long as I can remember, and I am not interested in carrying it another day longer. I want to forgive you for all of these things. I want you to forgive me for all of the things that I have done to you. And I don't know what that looks like, but I know something has to change." And in that incredible conversation, one that I actually hold with the highest regard, and I will until the day I die, during that conversation, we went from talking about me and all of the things that I was experiencing to talking about her, and I was let into her childhood in a way that she had never let me in before. The abuse that her father had passed down to her. And in a moment, it becomes very clear why our parents do the things they do. It's probably something they watch their own folks do. And whether it's habit or something else, they just keep that cycle going. Well, I am committed for the rest of my life to breaking every generational curse and cycle that I can for me and every other person that comes after me with my last name. And forgiveness is probably one of the most important ways that I believe we achieve this idea of breaking the cycle. After that conversation, my mom and I started to rebuild our relationship. It got to a point where when her name showed up on my cell phone, I couldn't wait to answer it to tell her what was going on in my life. I started calling her every Sunday after church and asking her what they talked about. And then we would discuss how we were both going to put that into practice during the week. And my mom and I started to develop a good relationship for the next 3 years. A year and a half ago, my mom got into a terrible car accident. She hit her head and died 3 weeks later. And I am here on this stage to testify to you that if I had not found a path to forgiveness with my mom, I can't even imagine the regret that I'd be holding on to for the rest of my life. And so my challenge to you today is that if there is still time for you to put back together some of these relationships, that you start today. because you don't know if you're going to have tomorrow. Remember earlier when I told you that the word forgiveness shows up 117 times in the Bible? Well, in numerology, the number 117 symbolizes spiritual growth, self-reliance, and compassion. It combines the energies of the numbers 1 and 7, emphasizing leadership, individuality, and a strong connection to spiritual wisdom and humanitarianism. All of those things are in the salad of forgiveness. If you want to grow spiritually, you will need to forgive. If you want to be a leader, you'll need to forgive. If you want a strong connection to spiritual wisdom, you will have to do as Jesus did, and you will have to forgive. And what I am so excited about is that after listening to me today, there are so many people in this room who are going to start to rebuild their relationships with the people that they've been holding on to a lot of junk with for a long time. And that puts a huge smile on my face. Remember one thing: forgiveness isn't a one-time event. It's a process. And I know you're going to struggle with it. But I also want you to remember that holding on to it is just going to cause this stuff to run in the background and create stress and rob us of the resources we need to be happy and productive. Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Thank you.
Whenever you're down, out in the cold, faithless and dark, your story's untold. Come take my hand and walk there with me. I know a place where we can be free. There is a light shining for you, guiding your way, helping you through. When shadows and gloom are all that you see, we'll find a place where we can be free. From the mountaintop down to the deepest valley, hear a voice calling you. It's the rising sun shining in the darkest valley. Can't you see you will be free? I have been far, I have been wide, searching for peace, somewhere to hide. Now